Today.
This morning you'll take the family to Tato Park, Ireland's most exhilarating day out. First you'll embark on an epic Viking voyage. Then you'll discover the big cats and birds of prey at the zoo. After lunch, you'll all ride the Cuchulainn coaster and make a complete idiot of yourself by screaming like a big baby. Mum will be like, make it stop. Oh no, oh no. Tato Park and Zoo is open every day. Terms and conditions apply. See tatopark.ie.
News Talk Breakfast.
In the metro today in the UK, a cleaning expert says you should be. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Washing your tea towel every day, every single day.
No, I don't wash it every day. No, I'm not going to lie to you. I don't wash it every day. No, tea towels, I don't know, until they go cardboardy. Bed sheets, until you can physically see dirt on them. Oh, Jesus, Kieran, seriously.
Do you know when I change a bath towel? When I'm drying myself and I can smell the towel and I realise I'm getting dirtier by drying myself.
News Talk Breakfast.
In association with Air.
Back tomorrow from 7 on News Talk. Challenge Henry.
You've been sending me your suggestions. Can I stroke this beautiful animal? Hello, aren't you lovely? Oh, you're trying to escape. And I hope I've risen to the challenge. Oh, she doesn't like it. Am I being a bit too harsh on her? Oh, sorry. It's getting water on your head. You don't like it. Oh, I'm so sorry. Do you think you have the ultimate challenge for me? Then email me, challengehenry@newstalk.com.
Challenge Henry. Only on News Talk.
They're just so damn hard.
We always remember the big victories, like that scratch card or the egg and spoon race you won in primary school. But what if you could win every single day? The Renault Zoe is the most affordable electric car in Ireland, and every time you drive, you win. Up to €1,200 a year off your running costs? Win. Passing your local petrol station and never stopping? Win. A home charge point? No carbon emissions? Just some more wins.
Best podcast from comedy to crime and films to food. Enjoy hours of music to suit every mood. The home of great radio, entertainment, sport and news. It's easy to download. It's free to use. One app, all your sounds, Go Loud right now. Download the Go Loud app or listen online at goloudnow.com. Go Loud, podcasts, radio and music to your ears.
We've got great offers this week at your local SuperValu, like SuperValu barbecue meat range, 3 for €10. SuperValu signature tastes potato salad or coleslaw, 2 for €3. Coca-Cola 1.5 to 2 litre selected range, 3 for €5. And Budweiser 8-pack 500ml cans, €10. It's got to be SuperValu. Enjoy alcohol responsibly.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard. Powered by MasterCard.
Now then, you're welcome back. This is the Sunday paper slot here on Off the Ball. We are coming to you live on all our social channels as well as on the radio, so you'll be able to stream it on Facebook and Twitter and Periscope and wherever you stream your social media, and on offtheball.com as well is where you'll get us. We're joined in studio by Jack Anderson, who is a professor of sports law at the University of Melbourne and back home for a couple of weeks, I presume, or months even?
No, just a few weeks, unfortunately.
Good, okay. Yeah. And we have Aidan O'Hara as well, who is Deputy Group Head of Sport with the Independent Group and has been working on the Sunday Independent this week.
Yes, yeah.
We will eviscerate you page by page.
Please do.
Why did you do this, Aidan? Why made you think this part would work? All that kind of stuff coming up. I'll run you through headlines, back pages very quickly then. Lost Pog. This is Paul Pogba, 26. He's on quite a few of the back pages. It seems basically Manchester United aren't too sure if Paul Pogba is going to turn up to catch the flight to Australia today. They're off on their pre-season tour around Australia, Singapore and China. 18-day trip. The word is not so clear on whether or not Pogba is going to turn up. So he's made quite a few of the back pages. And then Route 66 for Sharvin. This is Cormac Sharvin, who along with Robin Dawson are leading the Irish hopes in Lahinch, but probably a bit too far back realistically. So that's the back page of the Mirror. We have the Sunday Independent here, and it's Mayo, as has been the case for the last couple of weeks, to be honest, on the front pages in many cases. Mayo roller coaster keeps on rolling. Joe Brolly here. Watching Mayo play football is like watching Amir Khan boxing. The knockout could come at any moment, and just talks about how damn exciting it is to follow Mayo at the moment. And Killarney next Sunday is where the sat-nav is set for. And Dawson flies the home flag as Rock rolls with superb 60. That's Dermot Gilleese on Robert Rock's 60 yesterday in Lahinch. Sunday World then, D-Day for Pog. United furious at France Star's public bid for exit. Similar theme to the last story. Then Mayo, bring it on. A picture here of Donald Vaughan just after he'd punted the bouncing ball over the bar. You might remember that point yesterday, fist in the air. Mayo keep All-Ireland dream alive after Horan's men survive another scare in Limerick to set up Super 8's trip to Kerry. That's Philip Lanigan at the Gaelic grounds. Sports Star then. Mega books Maguire. 250k a week United deal. So Manchester United hoping to make Harry Maguire their third highest paid player as they try and grab him from Leicester for 90 million. A salary of 250k sterling a week is on offer for Maguire if he wants to go there. Another Pogba headline, Spot the Pog. Manchester United sweating on Paul Pogba returning for today's flight to Australia. It's a bizarre story, really, that they're not sure if he's going to make the flight or not. Sunday Times, Mayo and Galway. It's Aidan O'Shea in the air trying to catch the ball yesterday. Next up, Kerry. Mayo sing tribesmen to set up Super 8's clash in Killarney. And then Jonathan Northcroft here on the Pogba situation. So it's Juventus to offer 130 million sterling for Pogba. They do have money at the moment, Juventus, after splashing out over 116 million euro on Ronaldo last year and paying him 31 million euro in salary. So Juventus are thought to be preparing, writes Northcroft, a 130 million euro bid for Paul Pogba. Again, references the fact that Manchester United expect Pogba, says Northcroft, to be on their tour of Australia and the Far East and join up with the rest of the squad. He says the plane heads for Perth, Australia tomorrow. So there's a bit of confusion across the papers as to when that flight goes. But he's confident, Northcroft, that Manchester United are confident Pogba will show up. Although Mino Raiola has been saying that he wants away, and it seems Juventus will offer 130 million, which might be the worst thing in the world considering United bought him for 100 million. Be 30 million profit on a player that's not quite working out. And Sun Sport, Pogba D-Day. Man United Chiefs Fear Star won't show for flight to Oz, and Mayo again are beneath that. Horan's happy to survive. That Pogba story is pretty extraordinary, isn't it? At what point do you close the boarding for the flight? You just hang on 5 more minutes, he'll be here any minute.
Sounds like an episode of Friends, you know, where Ross and Rachel are, you know, after a wedding or something like that, and they're trying to wait on the flight, and I think eventually the United flight will take off and Pogba will be left there. But it's just, English football in July it's very hard to like sometimes, with sagas and things like that. It'll happen eventually. He'll go eventually because he wants to go. That's just the way it works these days. It's just a question of how much, and then you have Harry Maguire, you know, 250,000 going to, it just keeps on stacking and stacking and stacking, you know.
Isn't it terrible that you're now showing your age with a Friends reference?
Yes, I know.
Any Seinfeld ones for us there?
No, not quite. We'd probably do Frasier if you needed to, but anything after that I'd be struggling.
So hey, let's start with Mayo then, the Mayo roller coaster. Page 1, Joe Brolly's writing about it on page 1 for the Sunday Independent, and just talking about the thrills and spills of following Mayo.
Yeah, I mean the Amir Khan reference at the start. He then goes on to talk about the fans, the Mayo fans must feel similarly to the way Amir Khan's family must feel, like after watching him win 6 rounds and knowing that in the 7th he could get knocked out. That kind of feeling of, you know, against Armagh they dominated and they nearly, not quite threw it away. They'd be too strong to say they nearly threw it away, but they were nearly hauled in again last night. They were the better team for the vast majority of the game, and you know, we're nearly logged in or reeled in. He writes, like, when they were 8 up, 24 minutes, 6 up, 35 minutes, 51 minutes, 61 minutes and 68 minutes, and 8 up, 45 minutes, they showed no composure again. With 8 minutes to go, James Horan had his head in his hands, and the Mayo fans were experiencing the agony in the garden again. But at the end of it, which is why this is why Mayo continues to be the most important team in Gaelic football, and sat nav for Killarney, just the enjoyment of them. They're one of those teams you might not necessarily support them, but you want to watch them. You always want to watch them, unlike many other teams. You will always want to watch them,
including Galway. It's a relief to see Galway gone, he writes. Galway teams should not play like Fermanagh, and this was a team and a manager in its death throes. They played as we knew they would, with zero imagination. They soloed and hand-passed and ran up blind alleys, and by the 46th minute, not a single Galway forward had scored from play, which was a damning statistic yesterday throughout the game. He does right. The downside of Mayo's huge entertainment value is that they find it quite impossible to control a game. So that when they were 7 points up after 18 minutes, nobody was saying this game is over.
Yeah. I mean, what's impressive about this piece too is how it must have been delivered quite late, because the match was quite late as well. And it's very, well written and evocative piece. And he has some, usual kind of brawly quips in it. One of the things he says is another top class exhibition of goalkeeping from Clark, who runs like a dressage horse but doesn't put a foot wrong. And it's those kind of pictures that he paints that are tremendous. So and it's true. I mean, it's fantastic for the GA, the football championship, that Mayo are still in it. I mean, it's hugely important. This team has so many stories around it, and of course then he cannot avoid having to dig at Galway, because I think he has this thing for Corofin and Corofin's style of play as well, so that comes out as well. But it's the barrister getting the late minute brief and yet presenting beautifully in court, and it's a bit like that on the front page of the Sunday Independent today.
And Aidan, you know better than most, it's not an easy thing to do on the whistle under massive time pressure. You're probably ringing him saying, where is it?
Not quite. That tends to be like kind of clicking your fingers at a waiter, not just with Joe, with every reporter. Most reporters, if you ring them and ask them where their copy is, the first response is, well, if you got off the phone, I'd be able to file it a bit quicker. That's usually the first response. But
it's a fair response.
It is a fair response, absolutely it is. But I mean, and it wouldn't be just, like, obviously Joe has done this piece, but across the different papers, there's different deadlines across the day. So, you have the early matches, which will be going for first editions, then you have the later matches, and they're quite tight on deadlines. So producing the pieces, particularly the colory commenty type pieces on GA matches or on your international soccer matches, that's the real skill of a writer to be able to do those type of 850, 900 word pieces within 10, 15 minutes of the whistle blowing. It's
incredible, really.
It's a great skill. And then you're from the production point of view, then you're flying through it and making sure everything's okay with it, and and getting it in the paper and going, that's choosing your pictures and all that sort of stuff. But like, it's the complete
spending the next day staring at the typo that's ruined your day.
I hope you haven't spotted one, have you? Because it actually would ruin my day. No, that sort of thing would. There's a few mistakes over the years that still get brought up, and the few that will some will elicit phone calls from angry readers. Mostly if you leave out certain things, but. Most of the time, it's nobody wants to have typos or anything like that. You gave me a fright there for a minute.
No, you're safe. Pat Spillane in the Sunday World has a backward glance at last weekend and basically says that Kieran McGeeney was not an overnight success, but he's finding his feet now. Cian O'Neill talks about how he played a great part in the Newbridge or Nowhere mentality last year. However, since then, it's been downhill all the way. And this is certainly a county in need of a fresh voice and a new approach, says Spillane. Though he starts the whole thing by saying, I drive past the Curragh regularly during the summer months and I marvel at the new grandstand there that costs north of €80 million. And every time I do, I just enjoy this image. Yeah. Every time I do, I am infuriated at what a total waste of money it is, with €30 million of the cost funded by taxpayers. This is a building that's rarely used and certainly will never be full, judging by last week's woeful attendance at the Derby. If ever an event didn't deserve the hype, this was it. €1.5 million in prize money, 8 horses competing, 5 from the Aidan O'Brien stable, not a horse coming over from England or France. Methinks Dubai duty free have been sold a pup, and a very expensive sponsorship pup as well. And then a few lines later, he says, racing rant over, and now it's back to the football. Yeah. €30 million is a good old grant for that stadium.
It is. I suppose it's in some ways it's our most important sports industry, though. In terms of the bloodstock trade and what it's worth to the country overall. We do kind of underestimate that when we talk about sport as a whole. The Curragh, they will be disappointed at the attendance figures for the Derby. There's no question about that. And really, with Sovereign winning, it's effectively the pacemaker won the race, which is disappointing for them as well. But, we're still hugely important and we do subsidise horse racing, to a large extent because we have to, and it's important to us. He admits it's a rant, he admits that it's a rant, and as you say, the image of him driving up the whatever it is and passing the thing is a thing. God damn it, is a thing. I mean, and the rest of it then he goes on, Kieran McGeeney is okay, he can stay apparently, but Cian O'Neill can't. So it's a kind of a classic Pat Spillane, get to the point pretty quickly.
Get to several points, I think. It's kind of another thing in the piece. Like, I mean, it flows very well. You can almost you can read it almost in his accent almost. I think
he doesn't tease much out. He just, as you said, goes, this is what I think about this. He has to go. He can stay. Farewell, Pat.
That's fine. Because even with Kildare, you know, I think they won the Leinster minor again. They're doing quite well underage, you know. And Cian O'Neill is a well-regarded coach. You know, whether he can get it, he's got enough out of Kildare now is an issue. But you know, there are bigger issues there as well. But that's not Pat Spillane's style.
No, it wouldn't be. Nuance. Who needs nuance? Let's just punch it out there.
There's a market for that. There's definitely a market for that as well. Like, you know, people. I mean, that column's been going a long time, and you know, he's very successful on RTE and that as well. And that's his style. He makes his points, moves on to the next point, makes that as well. And that's, you know, there's a very strong audience for that.
You both liked Ross King in the Mail.
Yeah.
Who is Ross King? A lot of people might wonder.
Ross King is a Laois hurler who suffered a terrible injury in a Laois club game. I'm just trying to find exactly where the details are. He had his teeth knocked out in the Laois club game, and basically effectively fell out of love with the game for a little while and headed off travelling down in Puerto Rico. And the piece by Philip Lanigan in the Mail, and he talks about how he was in Puerto Rico watching Laois against Limerick, and you know, actually felt a bit of a need to come back, and Eddie Brennan got in touch with him then, and he came back and he scored a goal then last week in the Joe McDonagh Cup final, which they won. And he talks about how special that was. We had 15 or 20 minutes of Laois hurling being on top of the world between lovely Laois, and seeing Pat Delaney lift the cup, and Paddy, there are moments, and there are maybe moments in 50 years' time that I might be able to say I was there, I was on that team. So like, there's a good few little, I suppose, angles in it where you talk about the tiered championship would be one where people wouldn't necessarily think of Laois hurling being you know, they're not a powerhouse by any stretch, but you know, they had a chance today as well, obviously against Dublin, but you know, the importance on how much the success means to people involved in that. Also coming back from, as I said, what was a terrible injury, and rediscovering his love for the game. He also had a football scholarship, a soccer scholarship, and then he switched on to a hurling scholarship in UCD. But it's a very strong piece. The other thing about it is that he's actually playing today, and there's a piece by Michael Foley in the Sunday Times as well, with Tubridy from Clare, and both also playing today. And it's unusual, and it's good to see players who are involved in games today, you know, being able to give interviews in the week of games, you know, telling their story. There's nothing on the dressing room wall that could be put in the dressing room wall from Dublin or from Meath's point of view with the Clare piece. They're just good stories to tell, well told, well written, and gives a little insight into both the player and the team around them, you know.
Also, the last thing a team or management are doing on the morning of a game is checking the papers.
Absolutely. I mean, the contrast with, say, and I know it's professional, but I live in Melbourne, and the AFL, how they use the players all week to promote the game, constantly using the current players, is just a marked contrast to, you know, particularly GA, where the embargo settles about 3 weeks in advance, you know, and you just kind of go. And it'll be interesting to see in the future how the GPA deals with that. You know, if you're getting money from the GA trying to promote it indirectly, how that will settle. So that's one thing about that. The second thing is just the general point he makes about, I think Laois have 8 senior hurling clubs. They need everyone playing, and how he really enjoys the Joe McDonagh Cup and how they found their level. And he was saying it's probably slightly different with hurling, because if you meet one of the top teams, you can get a massive walloping. And he says, look, you have to find your own level and develop as you go along. So that's good on that. There's always things you'd like to see them being helped with. Like, for example, I'd like to see the Joe McDonagh winners getting 4 home games then when they go up to Leinster. You know, those things to help, instead of them being yo-yo, a bit like Carlow. So he speaks about that. And I thought, from my point of view, what was interesting is he spoke about last autumn and the I think his jaw was broken, or at least he had dental issues.
Thousands of euro of dental work done on him.
Yeah. And that was at the height of, do you remember last autumn, there was a number of club incidents in the GAA where we had violence issues. And sometimes with the GAA, it comes up every calendar year. There's certain things come up and then we forget about it. And he just kind of speaks about that. And so that's an interesting point. But there's a number of good GAA pieces in the Irish Mail, and that's probably the best one.
The paragraph here that just said, sorry, George, and yet the only day in the sun he looked like experiencing this year was in the Caribbean island of Puerto Rico in March. He knows there's nothing to be gained by reliving the trauma of the Lahinch County final last October, when a butt of a hurley through a face mask left his face a mess. Apart from the fissure in his lip that looked more akin to a knife wound, there was the smashed teeth that required thousands of euro of dental work. When the clip of the incident and the photographs of the damage done went national, the level of genuine shock and outrage stretched beyond local or parish rivalries. He goes into it a little bit, not too much. He doesn't want to relive it. He says no issue back on the senior team or anything like that. But it's very much a background to the piece, because when you're saying like Ross King, it's a name you might have heard of a little while ago. But that's the reason why you might have heard his name is probably because of that incident. And it was a couple of paragraphs, story that.
Yeah, I was saying to you guys earlier on, to have your teeth smashed out is one of the worst things that could happen to you on a field.
Yeah. And the dental costs that go with it, and the recovery and all that.
You probably never quite feel like your teeth are back the same way again.
Yeah.
The mental side of things with that, though, to come back to get back, within a relatively short period of time, to get back to the level that he has. And he seems to be flourishing under Eddie Brandon as well.
I never saw the incident that was filmed in that county final. I presume the butt of a hurl doesn't make its way through the helmet face guard by accident.
I don't know.
It's a freak accident if it does, but it sounds like it's one of those incidents.
Yeah, and I mean, it's a general thing because the nature of club championships now, that they're kind of August to October, or later, it becomes such an intense period. And we've had incidents like this almost every autumn for the last while. And you wonder, are we going to be looking at similar things, on social media again this autumn?
Well, I find that there's a rhythm to the off-season, and the post-All-Ireland inter-county finals to Christmas is almost GAA violence, because these issues crop up when the club matches are so intense. And then January is players are being burnt out month. They're playing Sigerson, Fitzgibbon, and all these Mickey Mouse kind of warm-up competitions. And then we get into the league, and we forget all that again until about October again.
Exactly. And that's, there's some pieces today about the playing rules as well, and that has its thing in the calendar as well. But that's just
you could do a GAA calendar at the start of the year, but week one, ridiculousness of pre-season competitions, week 2 burnout, week 3, etc. Like there's
week 8, the league is the league.
Yes, the league is the league. Week 9, don't read too much into it. Week 10, the hype. That sort of.
Just one other GAA piece I wanted to mention. I always think Paul Galvin makes a good effort to do something a bit different and give a good insight, and he does that on page 2, where he's just talking about GAA physios, and it's not something you give too much thought to. I think he starts off by remembering watching Paddy Small last week come in to the Leinster final, and really looking forward to seeing Paddy Small, because he felt that down the years he had the potential to be even better than Paul Mannion, but then he was helped off not long afterwards with a hamstring injury. And he goes on to say, it struck me lately that the GAA is in the middle of an injury epidemic going on for so long that it's acquired a normalcy. I thought that was a really good point. Injuries are part of the game, but to what extent are injuries normal? And, he mentions James Horn last week was kind of asked about the number of Mayo injuries, but a lot of them are bangs and knocks and contact injuries, impact injuries, as opposed to muscle injuries. And he said GAA training is like a contagion. One team starts something, the rest catch on. Early morning sessions, double sessions, the need for a team or a player to hit certain numbers in a game. Dermot O'Connor, he talks about getting 16k last year in Newbridge. That became the new bar to hit.
16 kilometres, just in case, rather than getting 16k, in case people misheard things based on the references a few weeks back.
Yeah. And then he said, in my time with Kerry, we found it difficult to keep physios for more than 2 years, and this brings in subtle complexities for players and management, often a gap in knowledge. The new physio doesn't know your player's injury history or the prehab that you have to do, and there's gaps there. There's no written record almost. I thought that was a very interesting point, because you don't think about that. And he says, in reality, all these physio positions are non-contract or part-time. How can 2 physios adequately deal with a training panel of 30 or 35 players? it's inevitable that energy, efficiency and performance will suffer. And that was, I guess in broad strokes, the brunt of his piece today. Thought it was a good one. I'd say it is the reality that a huge number of inter-county teams do have just the 2 physios looking after 2 players. And there is that element of contagion within training. Well, they're doing double sessions, we'll do double sessions. If ever, I mean, you need one-size-fits-all training in professional sport. Geez, in amateur sport where lads are doing different types of days' work, you really need it.
Absolutely, because the rest and recuperation isn't there because you're going straight into work. And it's always interesting to hear experts in the area like Niall Moynihan.
University professors will get a nice day's rest. You know, they go in and sit down and relax all day.
Thanks for that,
Joe. More hard-working people we're talking about here.
Well, I'll take your point for that, Joe. Thanks very much.
But the guy sitting here at a desk all day drinking coffee.
But it's when you hear people like Niall Moynihan saying, you know, the training to game ratios and, you know, the length of the pre-season for GA players, you do, and then you focus on they've only got 2 physios, you know. But it's interesting, some counties, and I think Kerry is like this, that at a central level they have strength and conditioning coaches who are there now going to be all the time there, so they can plan ahead then for 5 years and bring the minors through and I think that's important as well, right? You know, so you're talking a lot about acute injuries there, but just a general long-term kind of athlete welfare issue is a big one too. But it just shows you how big the GA is becoming, you know, that you need all of this, you know.
Do. I think as well, he writes here as well, which I thought was interesting, 80-minute games are another factor in the muscle injury toll. This is too long for amateur players. Now, you will hear a hell of a lot about how much training that GA teams are doing. So to write that 80-minute games are too long for amateur players, when you hear that the amateur players are training like professionals a lot, I would see a little bit of a contrast there, or a little bit of a contradiction.
But wouldn't you agree that despite the amateurs saying they're training like professionals, they are not?
No, they're not. But I
arguably not anything close.
No, well, it depends on what level of professional you would say. I would think. I mean, I wouldn't class them as, you know, training at the level of, you know, an AFL or a Premier League or, you know, teams like that. But you know, League of Ireland levels, and, you know, maybe I could be wrong there. I could get shot down with that. But like, I think certainly certain counties would be training at, you know, 4 or 5 times a week. You know, and all the strength and conditioning that goes in. I think the point about the training is the level of amount of pre-season training to matches. The ratio there is crazy. What's going to be interesting with this as well, when he talks about muscle injuries, like Dublin, for example, haven't really been pushed, as a couple of other counties as well, going into the Super 8s, and they're now going to have 3 games in 4 weeks, which is going to be interesting to see what way they rotate their squads, etc. And some will have the luxury of rotating their squads because they might win the first couple of games, and others won't. And how the team after week 4 comes out of it before going into potentially a semi-final and a final, that's going to be very interesting. On the back of an article, like, it'd be interesting to read this again in 4 or 5 weeks' time and just see how many muscle injuries have come from those.
Like, I was interested in his line that there is an injury epidemic, but we've just become so used to it that it's been normalised. Like, is that the case? You know, and you talk about how we're training and how they are training like professional teams. Even Carl Lacey was in here a couple of weeks ago. And he had spent time over at Arsenal for his diploma in sports management. And he was just comparing Donegal, even at their very best, with Arsenal. The Arsenal guys are coming in every day, blood test, urine test. They check your hamstring strength in comparison with your thigh strength to see how's the ratio, how's the balance. You're not training today. Could you imagine, like, a GAA lads are getting out of the car. Some of them, in reality, have grabbed a roll in the apple green on the way, and it's like, get onto the pitch, and they might be feeling a bit stiff, and they don't know why, but sure, we'll run it off, and might do a bit of foam rolling later. And you can see how you end up 2 physios, 35 lads, you know?
He makes the point as well about players, talking about, you know, player responsibility for this. Where are we now? Prevention is better than cure, and players have a personal responsibility to present themselves for the training in the best shape possible. There's a double edge with that, I think, as well, that there's also the if you look at professional soccer players, a lot of the time would say, because they know they've got a game the next week, if they feel a little something in their hamstring, they'll put their hand up and say, take me out now, because they know that you'll know straight away whether that's a weak injury. That's a 1 week injury or a 2 week injury, rather than trying to push through it. I'm not sure within the GAA there's the culture, if you like, of putting your hand up and saying, I'm actually hurt here, and for the benefit of the team, I might be trying to, come out. I'm not sure if that culture is there. I wouldn't be within GAA dressing rooms and things like that.
Quite often, for a start, there's no tomorrow in GAA.
No, there isn't.
If you're a Meath player today or a Clare player, That hamstring is staying out. We're going for it.
Yeah. And they're learning all the time. You know, if you look at the hurling round robin, you know, the third game was always the one, you know, and John Kiley famously against Tip rested some Limerick players and got a bit of, you know, come back from that. So they're learning, you know, so they're adapting all the time. But it's something, and the GA has quite a good medical and player welfare committee. They're quite good on this, and it's getting the research and just trying to see where the problems are and how you can deal with it centrally is probably the way to go.
It's a good piece though.
It is very good insight. Something totally different. Kevin Sheehy.
Yes.
You had Tommy Conlon write about this.
Well, Tommy Conlon wrote something very different and tragically so. He wrote about Kevin Sheehy, who died last week. Spoke to his friend and mentor Kevin Moore down in St Francis Boxing Club down in Limerick. There's a lot to the piece. It's really well written. I think there's a poignancy obviously about it. I think his funeral was yesterday.
Just for people who may not know who we're talking about here, this is Kevin Sheehy, who died after multiple injuries in a hit and run incident. There's been a man arrested, so we just have to be very careful here because he has been charged with murder is the latest situation. Kevin Sheehy won 5 Irish titles. He was a heavyweight boxer down in Limerick, very much focused on getting to Paris in 2024 and even had half a hope of trying to get to Tokyo next year. Boxer,
I might read
father to be.
The first 4 paragraphs of it. It's just kind of, you know, for all that he tried to take the bright side of the road, Kevin Sheehy's life was ended on the dark side of the street, slain in an act of violence that will tremor through his family for generations. Yesterday morning in Limerick City Cemetery, his father and mother bore witness to the most dreaded of all parental terrors. Standing by a graveside as their 20-year-old son was committed to the earth. Beside them, his girlfriend Emma Colbert, bearing the daughter who will be welcomed into the world next month, swaddled by love and grief, destined for a lifelong loss before she has even been born. And then it's just as close by, his friend and mentor Ken Moore of the St Francis Boxing Club, where the coach and protege were dreaming big dreams and working every day to make those dreams a reality. Like the first few paragraphs of that, as the story does, hits you right between the eyes, and you feel something within yourself when you're reading it, and you know it's a really well written piece. It's a piece obviously you would rather not have to write obviously, but I think Tommy Conlon's done an excellent job in bringing both the giving an insight, I guess, into Kevin Sheehy and how much he meant to the people around him, but also we were saying earlier on, myself and Jack, like how much that an insight into the area that he was in and how much the club and the sport meant to the area. Yeah, and it's just for me, from being from Limerick, you know, it just mentions that last Sunday he was at the Gaelic ground to see the Limerick hurlers, you know, and then, you know, went back home, and he also, and this is kind of, I think last year the Limerick hurlers had a kind of an amateur boxing thing that they were involved in as pre-season, and he was kind of there tangentially, but it kind of, and then suddenly he's gone, you know, and so that's, you know, that's a hugely poignant piece as well. But also then it talks about 2 things. He's from Crewe Park in South Hill, and you know, and all the problems that's been associated with there, and then the boxing club and what that provides, you know, and what St Francis provides. And one of the things both of us mentioned, you know, they charge €2 for people to train, you know, and how they help people more than the boxing itself is just a hugely, you know, important thing. Tommy writes, boxing clubs have been a time-honoured sanctuary for working class boys and latterly girls who need to release their energy and emotion in a safe space. And St Francis is where Kevin ended up training. Founded in 1928, Ken Moore, you mentioned, 44 years of age, been head coach for over 10 years, has about 40 members, adult and juvenile. It costs €2 per training session. He's a volunteer. The club is run by volunteers. No coach gets paid. Yeah, and I mean, I know people say, look, there may be better ways to help kids than boxing, for example, but boxing does a lot for kids from particular areas which are otherwise ignored by large sports and by
by government generally. So
why is that, Jack?
I just think it's kind of unfashionable now, because of the with the head injuries and with the innate violence of it. I'm a boxing fan, I think, and I think it does great good, and St. Francis is in the milk market around Limerick, and I know that the University of Limerick is moving into the city a little bit. You'd love to see someone like that help out a working class boxing club, and because it does so much that's beyond sport for Limerick itself. And in some ways the best of Limerick was represented by people like Kevin, and I think that's the important point of Tommy Collins' piece.
You can sometimes, when you read a piece like this, realise just how insulated from real money worries that most of us are lucky to be. Because Ken Moore says to Tommy Conlon here about the €2 charge per night. €2 isn't a lot of money, but it is a lot of money if you don't have it, If on the night you don't have the money, it's a big thing to the kid. It's a big thing to the parents not to have the €2. They think, God.
Yeah, €2, for a newspaper, €2.
Coffee or anything
like
that.
Anything like that.
He says sometimes unexpected expenses arise. Some people just don't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, and when you think that other, maybe even other sports are subsidised to such a huge level, and... I
was looking at the Greyhounds getting 17 million a year the other night.
Yeah, I mean, it's a point. Actually, Declan Lynch in the main part of the Sunday Independent mentions that as well in a tangential way. But also, what's important, they mentioned about the membership form and how they say to the kids, listen, for the year, this is discipline. Like, you are going to obey what we do, and if you do, you'll be better for it. And the kids like it, and welcome it and really buy into it. So, there's a lot in that.
I think
that clubs very interesting.
Yeah, I think boxing clubs like that, where to get to the level that Kevin Sheehy got to, requires the level of dedication, not to mind talent, but dedication, sacrifice, talent, all those things that I think are fairly unfathomable to most people. And I think, as Jack said, areas such as the one that he was from are largely ignored in a lot of ways, and so the boxing clubs provide, that talent is there, that discipline is there in those areas, in those areas of the country. It's just the outlet to actually express it often isn't there, which I think is where boxing clubs and things like that are so important. That they might not have great facilities and as you said, areas that are largely ignored by government and by other parts of the country. But again, the piece itself, getting back to the piece, it just captures why kind of the club was so important to the area and why Kevin Sheehy was so important to the club.
It really does. On the importance of Sheehy to the club, having won 2 national under-22 championships, with his profile rising, he'd become a figurehead, says Moore. By the power of his example, he would train twice a day. He had a natural authority that comes with being a heavyweight, and he'd always go over, says Moore, to welcome any new kids who joined. A few words to them, it would mean a lot to them. And Moore talks about the loss he's going to be. On what it gives to the kids coming to the club, we don't train boys or girls here to go outside and be thugs. We train them so they don't have to go outside and feel like they have to fight. We train them to realise there's a different life if they want it. And then the point he says, which you referenced, and kids like to be held accountable. Initially they won't, but after a while they absolutely like to be held accountable. They feel more mature. We don't speak down to them, we don't bark at them, and they like that. And he talks about the level of esteem that kids get from it. So
absolutely, and
amazing piece.
And it also gets across, Kevin the person well as well. It mentions, at one stage going to Russia on a trip, and why would you want to leave Crewe Park in South Hill? And then he's over in Moscow on the train then to St. Petersburg, and he comes back and says, actually, Crewe Park is very small, but he's still proud of it. And I think that's a lovely way to kind of show what Tommy has done.
Yeah, it's desperately sad. Condolences to all concerned, because it really is just terrible. It's on page 5 of the Sunday Independent if you want to read it, and it's definitely recommended. We'll take a pause for a moment and go over to O'Moore Park. Anthony Moyles has watched the first half. What's the latest there?
Yeah, it's all square here, Joe. 1-9 to Meath, 12 points to Clare in a rip-roaring contest. It's great. It's actually great to be able to say that. It's been a while since I've been at a rip-roaring contest.
Considering 2 weeks ago I thought you may never watch football again.
Yeah, I was worried for my sanity after that. But no, it's brilliant. It's great. I'm looking out. Loads of kids out in the pitch here. Decent crowd. Massive crowd from Clare and a decent crowd from Meath. On some unbelievable scores. Like, I mean, Jamie Malone at number 12 for Clare has kicked 4 points from play, and each one has been better than the next. Like, he hit one just at the end there, outside the right boot, about easily 50 metres out, on the run, just pinged it, and has been causing problems. Meath attack hasn't really got going. They have Conlon inside, and for some reason they're not kicking the ball into him because he has the fellas under pressure when the ball has gone into him. They got a goal. Donald Keoghan again has been really, really good coming up the pitch, but just half backs and midfielders not getting their head up early enough and hitting the full forward line. But apart from that, yeah, they've flattered to deceive really. Lots of effort, but not enough. It's not been as slick. Clare now have hit some monster scores. Those types of scores where, you know, you just kind of go, Jesus, is it that kind of a day? Because they have hit some massive ones way out on near the sideline. One last one there from Malone came in, hit the post and dribbled over. Gary Brennan has been okay. Porrick Harn has actually been doing a man marking job on him and has restricted him to 1 point and has really restricted his influence very, very well. But it's a great game, I have to say, very evenly poised. Clare had a decent breeze first half, you would say. You can't really feel it up here, but looking down on the flags, it is definitely blowing into the far end. So yeah, it's all set up.
It sounds like it. So on balance, a draw at halftime, a bit right, and this could go either way, listening to you. It
could, genuinely, yeah. You know, Clare again have hit some monster scores. Probably definitely 5 of their 12, 4 or 5 of their 12 have been ones that could have easily just went wide. You know, they haven't really got many just well worked tap overs. They've got a couple of frees, but they've 4 wides. I think Meath only have 1 or 2 wides.
So are you almost saying the Clare scores might be a touch unsustainable?
Yeah, because Meath are actually doing quite well in their full back line, so they're restricting them to long range shots, which have all gone over, to be fair to them. Now look, you know, they could keep going over, but what I'm saying is that, you know, as a defender, you're kind of saying, listen, he's taking a shot from 50 odd metres out near the sideline that's going over. There's not a whole pile that can do more than that. I think the Meath full forward line, just there's been a bit of lack of work rate for me now around the Meath full forward line. Right. Clare have been coming out way too easy with the ball. Their intensity levels have to pick up there, but yeah, like, I mean, it's brilliantly poised. Both teams are tiring. The goal that Meath got, you could see Clare had got a great score and then just switched off, and Meath just literally just ran down the middle, popping passes overheads. Fellas just stopped chasing runners. So the bench is going to be very, very important, and for that matter, you know, you would hope that Meath might have a little bit more on the bench. You know, they've obviously taken Graham Riley and Ben Brennan out of the starting 15 and put them on the bench, so these guys might have a point to prove when they come on.
Okay, Anthony, sit tight. Back to you across the second half. Before we get back into the papers, John Duggan standing by at Lahinch. John, we're back to the days of Seve here. 2 Spaniards fighting it out.
Matadors, Joe, matadors. Seve won it 3 times, the Irish Open in the 1980s. Jose Maria Olazabal has won it. Sergio Garcia's won it. And now, Rafa Cabrera Bello 15 under par and John Ram 14 under par. So Cabrera Bello has been perfect on the front 9. A birdie the first, birdie the fourth with mid-range putts. Nearly aced the Dell hole. You know, Joe, from being here earlier in the week, that's the hole where it's a blind shot off the tee. Nearly went in for a hole in 1, birdie that. Has missed a putt there in 9 to go to 16 under, but remains 15 under. John Ram, though, he's so exciting to watch. He is something else to watch, John Ram playing golf. Birdied 2, 5, 7, 9. I watched his putt on the 10th, and it just accelerated right into the centre of the cup, putting with such confidence. A 64 yesterday from John Ram. Then on the 12th, 577-yard par 5. His brute strength getting him there in 2. Edge of the green, 30 feet, bang, into the cup. John Ram, 14 under par. Winner 2 years ago, of course, of the Irish Open. Really in form, and he's making a massive charge here in the final round and making it exciting at Lahinch. So Ram is 14. Robert Rock, the overnight leader, 13 under par, even par for his round today. Been out of position a few times. Then Xander Lombard, 12 under. Cormac Sharvin, mixed bag for him today. Back to 8 under par. 2 bogeys early, then 3 birdies in a row, then another 2 bogeys. Robin Dawson back to 6 under after 12, Joe. Right. Jeez, John Ram, phenomenal. He's on course for the round of the day, that's for sure.
I guess, the more experienced winner in the field, and he won't let up, that's for sure.
Well, he finished really well yesterday as well. He came back in, I think, 30 shots yesterday, John Rahm. So he is, like, the way he won at Port Stewart would suggest to me that he's almost the favourite now. Cabrera Bello was tentative over that putt at 9, and Cabrera Bello hasn't won that much. He did win the Scottish Open a couple of years ago, but he's only won 3 times in the European Tour. And John Rahm has just got that. He can play any shot, John Rahm, when he's on. And I think he struggled a little bit in the rain early yesterday, but once it got sunny and calm, he really took the back 9 apart yesterday, and he's threatening to do that again. And I can't really see Rock doing it today. I can't see Lombard, Campillo, Wiesberger, Pepperell. This to me is a Cabrera, Bello and Rahm shootout now for the title.
Okay, very good, great stuff. John Duggan in Lahinch. So Cabrera Bello on 15 under, John Rahm making a big charge, just 1 shot back now. Rahm is on the 13th as we speak. We'll take a short break. We're back with more from the papers.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
News Talk Breakfast.
In the Metro today in the UK, a cleaning expert says you should be. This is ridiculous. I'm sorry. Washing your tea towel every day, every single day.
No, I don't wash it every day.
No,
I'm not going to lie to you. I don't wash it every day.
No, tea towels, like, I don't know, until they go cardboardy. Bed sheets until you can physically see dirt on them.
Oh, Jesus, Kieran, seriously.
Do you know when I change a bath towel? When I'm drying myself and I can smell the towel and I realise I'm getting dirtier by drying myself.
News Talk Breakfast.
In association with Air.
Back tomorrow from 7 on News Talk.
Satisfying afternoons with Harvey Norman. First-time buyer? Wondering how to get everything done? Don't. Just sit back and watch your house become a home with Harvey Norman's delivery and install.
Go, Harvey, go!
We always remember the big victories, like that scratch card or the egg and spoon race you won in primary school. But what if you could win every single day? The Renault Zoe is the most affordable electric car in Ireland, and every time you drive, you win. Up to €1,200 a year off your running costs? Win. Passing your local petrol station and never stopping? Win. A home charge point? No carbon emissions? Just some more wins. And 0% APR over 5 years? Well, you know what I'm going to say about that. Book a 24-hour test drive in the Renault Zoe at your local Renault dealer today. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply, subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
Imagine the future you desire. Is your current lifestyle creating or dismantling that future? In today's world of distraction, our health is being challenged like never before. Now we need a space to breathe, nourish and reawaken. Soul Space is that space. A synergy of heartfelt conversations and inspiring workshops. Join me, Jerry Hussey, and a host of inspiring speakers from medicine, psychology and well-being in Claregalway Castle, September 15th. Visit soulspace.ie.
Proudly supported by News Talk.
Potato waffles, they're waffly versatile. They go with cheese or piping Mexicano, tuna, eggs on avocado, pulled pork sausage, fish fingers, eggs on bacon. Grill them, bake them, load them, love them. Potato waffles, they're waffly versatile.
Summer is magical at Farnham Estate Golf and Spa Resort Cabin. Sophisticated and luxurious, where my only worry is which spa treatment to have in one of Ireland's best hotel spas. The winding forest and lakeside walks for picnics. The magical spa with the outdoor infinity pool. The Parkland Golf on perfect greens. Less than 90 minutes from Dublin. Find the perfect summer escape at farnhamestate.ie.
Now, just one phone call can transform everything. Call Air and get unlimited fibre broadband for just $39.99 a month for a whole year. That's your gaming, your favourite movies and streaming. And you'll get the Air Sport Pack free. The only place to watch all 48 games of the Rugby World Cup. Call 1-800-500-300, go in store or visit air.ie. Air. Let's make possible. New customers only. $59.99 a month thereafter. Subject to availability. Air Sport Pack channel subject to change. Bundle activation fee may apply. Full terms on air.ie.
Start your story at Woodies. Brighten up your summer with amazing deals. Dulux Weather Shield 10 litre colours, 2 for €120. 6-pack summer bedding, 2 for €5. And garden furniture and barbecues, up to an incredible 50% off. Woodies. We're all homemakers. T's and C's and exclusions apply.
Are you living in Ireland and do you hold a UK driving licence? If the UK leaves the EU without a deal on the 31st of October, your UK licence will no longer be valid to drive in Ireland. Make sure you have a valid driving licence and that you are legally allowed to drive in Ireland by exchanging your UK licence for an Irish driving licence. Don't risk possible lengthy delays in exchanging a UK licence. Apply now. For more information, visit ndls.ie. Getting Ireland Brexit Ready, an initiative of the Government of Ireland.
Good price, but the APR...
Zero.
The deposit, though, it must...
Zero.
I understand, but...
Zero.
Okay, it's an incredible deal. Just please stop doing that.
Okay. Zero. The 192 Renault range. 0% APR, 0 deposit, 0 catches. Visit your local Renault dealer today. Finance is made under a hire purchase agreement. Terms and conditions apply, subject to lending criteria. See Renault.ie.
The Sunday Papers on Off the Ball.
Brought to you by Avantcard, powered by MasterCard.
Welcome back. So Clare and Meath are level at half-time in the football if you're just tuning in, and Rafa Cabrera-Bello leads John Ram by one shot at the Irish Open. John Ram, 6 under through 12 holes, has got to 14 under. Cabrera-Bello is on 15 under. We're reviewing the Sunday Papers. We have Jack Anderson in studio, who is Professor of Sports Law at the University of Melbourne, and from The Independent we have the Deputy Group Head of Sport, Aidan O'Hara. And we're going to the Sunday Times next. Wimbledon, page 10, and it won't surprise anyone to see that the 15-year-old Koko Gauff, I've watched her play and I'm not 100% sure on that pronunciation. Koko Gauff is on the way to global stardom, says Nick Pitt, and there are two really good pieces about Koko Gauff. Martina Navratilova written one and Nick Pitt's written one. Nick Pitt's is actually excellent in that he's got a load of stuff on the family and her background and how she's come here. And I think what really sent a shot of electricity through the whole thing was when she was basically on the cusp of match point against Polona Hergog the other day, and she came back from what would have been a straight sets defeat, facing 2 match points. And the crowd almost tried to rouse her, as Nick Pitt says, and he writes, maybe it was embarrassment or anger or a desire to show that after all the double faults and shots into the net, she really can play. Whatever it was, she became a player transformed, one who could move and hit freely, a fighter. She had belief and once again was a queen, and it was the most extraordinary thing when she actually turned that around from match points to win, and her family going ballistic in the crowd. And you're looking at this and it's like Serena Williams is passing the mantle on. It's an extraordinary story.
Yes, yeah. It's certainly it's the story of week one. Anyway, Wimbledon was, it's all anybody's talking about, the fact that she's 15. I'm not sure if it was 2004 or 2003 that she was born, but it's a terrifying thought of that the date of birth.
Where were you in 2004? I was being born, says Koko Gauff.
Yes, I can't remember what I was doing then, but it was, the Nick Pitt piece is very good in the sense that the background to it, and you know, Serena Williams, obviously the shadow of the Williams sisters really is always cast across athletes, especially American tennis players, especially black American tennis players. The shadow is never far away. One thing that Nick Pitt writes here is there were two critical differences in comparing the Williams family to Koko Gauff's family. There were two critical differences. First, the Williams family were not well off. Second, it was Koko who wanted to play tennis to please her father. The Williams girls at first were dragooned, not that they are complaining. It just previously, I give a little anecdote about how Koko had been watching her father cheer Serena Williams at the Australian Open in 2009, and kind of just said, you know, I want to do the same thing. So,
Daddy, do you like that? And then she said, well, I want to do the same thing. Geez, talk about the 20 by 20 campaign and the whole if she doesn't see it, she can't be it tagline. And all of these taglines can have a stench of marketing and seem a bit trite. But if ever there was a linear story there, it's literally Koko Gauff and her father watching Serena Williams and then her saying, well, I'd quite like to do that. And what, 10 years later? Here we are. She beats her sister in round one of Wimbledon.
Yeah, absolutely. The interesting thing about it is she's 15, isn't she? 15, and women's tennis has been here before. You remember people like Jennifer Capriati and all of these, and they actually brought in rules to make sure that they weren't overexposed. So she's right on the cusp. There's only a certain amount of tournaments she can play, so it's a huge amount of pressure. 1 week into Wimbledon, suddenly post Serena, here's our new star. you know. So and we've had it a little bit with Naomi Osaka as well. But having said that, you read Martina Navratilova, who should know one or two things about this, and she says Koko's tennis IQ, it's not just her physical ability, her tennis IQ is excellent.
She says off the charts.
Yeah, and I mean that
the phrase she used for her tennis IQ.
Yeah, and that's as good as you get, you know.
She elaborates on that and says the way that Koko began to change the pace of her shots, mix up the patterns of play, terrific. That tennis intelligence and the ability to figure things out when the pressure is on and you're at full tilt is partially innate.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting observation.
It is. And it's also interesting, and going back to the Nick Pitt thing as well, that if you compare to, say, someone like Naomi Osaka, who recently left her coach, and there's a complex family background there with her. I think her dad is Haitian and her mum's Japanese, but she's actually really American. She's lived. Yeah. But you compare to, the family behind Koko's family, her dad was an ex-college basketballer, her mum, I think her mum...
Heptathlete.
Yeah, heptathlete as
in
well.
Florida
State. And even her dad was a kind of a fairly senior business executive as well. And both of them are behind her in terms, there's a huge support.
It's interesting because they cut on the BBC to the shots of her dad's sports bar, where everybody was obviously cheering on the victory. And you thought, well, that's his deal. And you read Nick Pitt's piece today. So he was in Georgia State. He quit when he realised she was pretty good, and she was still young. I mean, she's still young now. But when she was still young, he quit his well-paid post as head of sales for a pharmaceutical company to train Koko full-time. When she was 8, she showed real promise. And the dad says, I left corporate America, just focused on getting her on her way. They moved to Florida, because that's where tennis champions go. And her mother basically homeschooled her as well, which was the amazing thing. Her mother went to Florida State, was a heptathlete, and... quite extraordinary story.
Yeah, it's an extraordinary background to it, and the success she's had so young.
You're worried for her. That's what you want to get out here. You're dancing around the I'm very worried for this person.
Well, it's always the next Serena, and sports often go through this, and tennis is a pretty unforgiving type of game, and women's tennis is quite competitive now. They're probably looking for a star, and now it's lashed on to Koko. But
well, they're desperate. How many female tennis players can the casual sports fan name in the top 10?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things about Melbourne is the Australian Open is there, and we went to the first week and get a ground pass. And I'm fairly well up to date with sport, but in terms of female tennis players, I wasn't that aware, and that's the casual observer as well. So this is part of the package as well. It's just, and you see quotes like John McEnroe saying, I'll be amazed if she's not world number 1 before the age of 20.
Yeah, I saw that.
Wow.
Martina Navratilova, and next year it could be another matter, and it should not be too long before we are claiming Gauff as a Grand Slam champion. Another reference is close to the finished article. The subhead of Navratilova's piece: at 15, Koko is a more complete player than most on the women's tour. Now, it's week 1 of Wimbledon. Like she has been absolutely the story of week 1 of Wimbledon. She was 2 match points down in her second match, so she was within, a good serve of losing that match. Now, it's absolutely fantastic for her. Her story is brilliant. Her background is brilliant. She seems to have a very solid background. But there's an enormous amount of pressure coming on her because, as well, going back to the Nick Pitt piece, if you almost marry the two together, where Martina Navratilova is talking about it should not be too long before we are claiming Gauff as a Grand Slam champion. As Jack said earlier on, they have these things within the Women's Tennis Association whereby they can only play 10 WTA events between her 15th and 16th birthday, then 12 and 16 in the next 2 years. It says unless their rules are changed and they've been called for review, she will not enjoy full professional eligibility until she is 18. I'm not sure when she's 16, but over 2 years before she will be fully professional. So where she goes and how she develops in those next 2 years is going to be very, very interesting to see. And also, she plays Simona Halep tomorrow, who the crowd will obviously be on Gauff's side. That's going to be a huge
just
thing.
So Navratilova can't be accused of getting ahead of herself. She tips Halep to win tomorrow.
Yes. Oh, she does, absolutely. Yeah.
The better player. she'll have more trouble with Halep's ground strokes. They're far more accurate. They're deeper. So she actually says, as good as Koko Gauff is going to be, Halep is going to beat her tomorrow.
Yeah.
So I thought that was quite a measured view. And at 15, think how much you're going to develop over the next 18 months.
Absolutely.
2 years.
Yes. But you're developing into, you're going into swim with the sharks very, very soon. When you Simona Halep, you talk about the players that a lot of people can't really name.
Halep would be one of them.
Halep would be one of them. There's Kvitova. There are a lot of players out there. The quality, I would say, of women's tennis isn't as good as it was when Serena was in her pomp, but the depth of it is possibly stronger, and that's the environment in which she's going into.
Yeah, it sounds. Navratilovan's piece wouldn't be the worst one for Koko to read herself, because she just lists out a few things. There are a few technical things to change. Her forehand can get a bit short and high, presenting a sitter to her opponent. She could hit the ball with more spin and pace on both wings. Her serve could be improved by using more spin, especially slice. She's good volley, but could use a bit more, especially when opponents are slicing from the back of the court, as Hergog did on Friday. So, to the point. Very good constructive criticism. She does add, these are minor fixes.
Exactly. And I mean, it's good analysis, but then you think last year she won the girls' singles at the French Open at 14. So she's got time.
She does, I think she'll be all right. Her mum, by the way, has a good quote. She's definitely a teenager. If people only knew how immature she is back at home. Which is true of any kind of 15-year-old.
Absolutely.
Koko's bedroom, her mother confirms, is untidy. On the wall is a poster of Serena Williams. So it's a surreal story, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's on page 10 of the Sunday Times. She's definitely been the story of week 1. Women's World Cup, a few different pieces here.
Amy Lawrence has a piece in the Observer. It's also in the Sunday Independent, talking about her first experience of Women's World Cup.
Just how far it's come, really. Where she got, it seems, Amy Lawrence in her first year as a journalist in 1995, and had not been following the women's game, got roped into doing co-commentary on the Women's World Cup final for all of Europe on Eurosport. That's how under-resourced the media was around the game back then.
And also there can be a tendency, and it's still there, I think, with female sports journalists, to kind of pigeonhole them into female sports. Which, as Amy Lawrence kind of writes, that she didn't really have a great deal of interest in the Women's World Cup, but it's the sort of thing that you can't turn down, obviously, but it kind of shows how far it's come. Where she talks, she did the commentary with, again, showing my age, Stato from Fantasy Football League, who was Angus Loughran, who I think he was on BBC Racing, and so I'm not sure what he's up to now, but he'd been best known as that. But the cupboard cum studio was titchy and boiling. The monitor delivered the live feed was Diddy, best of the lot. We didn't have a pre-match team sheet, so come kick-off, did not even have the list of the names and numbers of the players we were not particularly familiar with. Now, I wouldn't do live radio or TV very often, Joe, but I'd say that'd be pretty much a worst nightmare to not have that sort of thing available in front of you.
In the pre-internet age as well.
Yes,
and then you contrast it with the semi-final between England and the US. Highest viewing figures for any programme so far this year in Britain, 11.7 million. Viewers. That's more than 50% of the national audience. I mean, it's huge. And even in Ireland, the game averaged 220,000, 20% share. I mean, it's just incredible growth in the game, and it'll be reflected in today's final, where a lot of the commentary is about the US team.
Just as an aside, there's a great contrast at the moment with the women's football in England and the men's cricket team, who are in the World Cup semi-final. The one there is of a tournament been hosted in England, but it's on Sky. And people don't know, they know what's happening. It's a big enough deal. But were that on the BBC, you wouldn't be able to move for cricket coverage across titles in the UK, even with Wimbledon and the Women's World Cup. It'd be an enormous deal.
There's no comparison.
No.
Amy Lawrence in the Observer and in the Sunday Independent writes about the '95 Women's World Cup. It was meant to be on in Bulgaria. That fell through last minute, and Sweden had to step in. She says, just for a bit of perspective, consider that only 2,286 people showed up for Brazil's first match, which, she adds, dwarfs the 665 in the audience for England's opener, which puts the 250 in attendance for Nigeria's introductory appearance into the shade. 12 teams participated in all. No comparison now.
No, absolutely no comparison. I suppose the common thread is the US still dominates.
Yeah.
You know, that's interesting. It probably goes back to the fact that they, at college level, they have various laws which help equality for women's sport, that they invest as much, and that's fed into that. But and there's a few pieces about the US women's team today. And
Glenn Moore in the Sunday Times and Eamon Sweeney in the Sunday Minute. Not so sure they like this US women's team.
No, the headline in the Glenn Moore piece, I think it's something like hard to beat, tough to like, or something like that. And the brashness of them, they make no apology for their brashness. That's what they do. Like, they're there to win matches. I don't think they care a great deal what other people think of them. But
Eamon Sweeney talks about American self-obsession and is thankful that the US don't really participate really in international sports all that often, because we'd be stuck with this kind of business.
Yeah, and there's the inevitable reference then to Trump as well, and the Twitter spat with various US players as well. But I mean, I don't think they care, you know, and we've had that kind of thing about the tea sipping celebration as well.
I was down in Lahinch. What was the issue with this? I didn't get this, because I saw someone on my Twitter feed pop up as if to say, they know we like our tea, and so it was a bit as if like, oh well, look, you can slag us about a lot of things, but you can't slag us about like tea.
I thought,
like this was, you can't go there.
I think it's the history with the Boston Tea Party and all that kind of stuff, and American independence and all that. So it's actually quite a funny, you know.
That's quite clever then, no?
It's a clever one, and I don't think, you know, and I think the Women's World Cup has so many good stories, and even the VAR debates have been interesting within that context. So,
but I presume the tea thing was like a manufactured controversy. Nobody was outraged over the tea.
I think people were confused by it in as much as they wanted to know what the celebration was about, and then I think possibly got, you know, 2 and 2 plus equals 6, and I think Alex Morgan came out and explained what it was about, and it was, I can't really remember what she said, what it was about, and then she kind of gave out with a comparison with the men's, who, I think the quote was, who grabbed their sacks in celebration, which was, didn't quite get what the point she was trying to make, because if you were doing that, you would be booked for it, you'd be punished for it, and there would be a similar controversy.
Like, not everything is a double standard.
No, absolutely not.
You know what I mean?
No,
like,
absolutely not.
You can revert too quickly to that, and it's not like you're allowed to say that was a weird celebration. What was that about? It's not because you're a woman.
No.
It's a weird celebration. But I don't think anybody was outraged by the same token.
No, it just became one of those things that
she's slagging us over our team.
Yeah. And in the same way as the Megan Rapinoe Trump thing, like, if the US do win this, the next thing is going to be, will they go to the White House? How many will go to the White House? Who will go to the White House? Like, they're a superb team. The game against England was an outstanding game of football. I
have seen interesting quotes that ironically they're one of the least diverse teams in American sports.
I haven't kind of followed that up, you know, but I think so, and that's interesting. But it's also interesting, the Dutch are interesting as well. I think they won Euro 2017.
They did, yeah.
So and the last game they played, there was about a 5 million viewership, which is only just beaten by the Ajax Tottenham second leg.
Glenn Moore has this in the Times. Back home, TV audiences, this is in Holland, 5 million watched the semi-final despite the 9 o'clock kickoff in a country of 7.3 million. This has been exceeded for a sports event this year only by the 5.4 million who saw Ajax Tottenham second leg in the Champions League. So 400,000 difference between Ajax Spurs and the Dutch in the semi-final.
So it just shows for women's sport generally why it's important. I suppose I
think it is a triumph of free to air as well, though.
Yes. Totally.
Do you know what I mean? Totally. I've no doubt this has been a watershed moment for the women's game. But I also think it does hold up free to air sport in comparison. If this Women's World Cup was behind a paywall in most countries, it wouldn't be getting these audiences.
No, absolutely not. And with the cricket, I think Sky have said that if England get to the final, which is probably unlikely given they're playing the Australians, they will show it free to air. It'll be interesting to see the viewership on that.
But last year,
sorry, I was just going to say briefly, like a Six Nations game, like at 8, 9, 10 million BBC One in the UK. The Lions games were 300,000-400,000.
I think last year when Ben Stokes had the England cricketer, there was a trial. He was up for, I think it was assault or something like that, wasn't it? And one of the concerns they had was around jury selection, because obviously him being supposedly a very well-known figure, and that really wasn't an issue at all. And Ben Stokes, Ben Stokes is one of the best players in the world. There's people in England don't really know who Joe Root is, who's the England cricket captain. You know, lads who have won Ashes, who in the past, everyone knows who Ian Botham is because of his exploits in the Ashes. There's lads who won captain teams to 2 and 3 Ashes, but in the last 15 years since 2005. And people in Britain don't know who they are. It's incredible. It's a great study in some ways that the ECB in England, they got more money from Sky, but the exposure that they lost is really highlighted by, say, the Women's World Cup as, if you like, a niche sport that can be extremely popular once people, can see it.
Golf has shot itself in the foot by giving away the majors as well, including the Open to Sky, which was just a bad idea. Glenmore, definitely, you talk about the 13-0 thrashing of Thailand, the celebrations, the tea celebration, whatever the upset caused by that is. He definitely mentions Ali Krieger's claim that the US squad was so good that they had the 2 best teams at the World Cup as a real sign of most neutrals saying, okay, I actually do want to see all you knocked off your pedestal.
But of course it's the American mentality where, that it's that kind of positive affirmation that they are, better than anyone else. And it grates with, say, certainly in Ireland it would grate and with the UK, but they don't care, and their record in the World Cup proves that they are the best.
There's nobody going to be coming out and saying, sure, they gave us a good, Thailand gave us a difficult first half, and that kind of thing. There's not going to be any of that kind of
listing
stuff.
off all the Thailand players.
We have to be better the next day.
We'll go to John Duggan in a minute if he's standing by, because John Ram has taken the lead at the Dubai Duty Free Irish Open. That's very impressive stuff. He's stayed at 14 under. Cabrera Bello, feeling the pressure somewhat, has dropped back 1 under for his round, so 13 under overall. So John Ram is leading the Irish Open as things stand by a shot. On the golfing front, there are a few pieces, as you might imagine. Dermot Gleeson has spoken to pretty much the best golf coach in the world right now, Pete Cowen, who was in Lahinch, and it's a good chat. There's Wilma Erskine, who is the boss at Portrush, literally called the boss, courtesy of Darren Clark, and she's been down in Lahinch this week, looking at how they're doing things, but really talking about the transformation in Portrush as a town and as a golf course over the last 30 years. And then there's Paul Kimmage following Matt Wallace and his long-suffering caddy. So these are the 3 pieces that kind of jumped out at us from the golf. They're all very good in different ways.
There's a couple of pieces in the Mail as well. Philip Quinn talks about the round that he played in Lahinch as well, which is, for the Sunday papers, it can be quite difficult. You just gave a live update of the score, so to make sure that if people are still picking up their papers, that their golf stuff isn't out of date. There's a report from yesterday, but there's other stories that are still interesting on Sunday evening or on Monday and that kind of thing. And Paul Kimmage's piece around the caddy is good. I mean, there's a bit of Matt Wallace's caddy, I should say.
Dave McNeely. No, I wasn't particularly aware of this before I read that piece. Oh, were you not?
No, I have to say. I obviously knew who Matt Wallace was, but I didn't know his what appears to be his very large reputation for chewing out the caddies that he has.
If you go onto the internet after this, Matt Wallace has come on the scene lately. He loses the plot at his caddy, and he will shout at his caddy, and he'll do it on camera. Dave McNeely has been on the scene a long time. Has caddied for Padraig Harrington, has caddied for various people. At 67, says Kimmage, he's the oldest, most loved, and unluckiest bagman on tour. He spent 3 years with Nick Faldo before the Englishman's triumph at Muirfield, 6 years with Nick Price before he won at Turnberry, 5 years with Harrington before he won at Carnoustie, and he declined John Daly's invitation a week before his win at St Andrews. So he's never quite won a major. He says, I'm going to write a book, How I Caddied the Winners of 14 Majors, none of them with me. So he's a sense of humour about it all.
Absolutely.
And he's taken on this angry young man, Wallace, is kind of the theme of Kimmage's piece. And I was up there, and anytime I was anywhere near the Matt Wallace group, Kimmage was lurking, pen and paper in hand, watching the rounds in full.
And I think there's an understanding within the industry, if you like, that golfers are going to vent every now and then, and that the caddy is the nearest person.
It's the verbal punch bag.
But the point about this is, and there's lots of people within the piece saying that the European Tour needs to take a look at this, and actually I think Paul Kimmage asked the European Tour what's their stance on bullying in the workplace, and they said, they gave them the usual code of conduct stuff, and then they say, but by the way, that doesn't apply to players and caddies because they're independent contractors, which is an interesting thing for caddies, and just shows you the kind of position they're in. They get on to the European Tour Caddies Association as well, and they kind of give the line, you're entitled to an environment that's free from discrimination or intimidation, but they can just contact the European Tour again. So it goes around in a circle. So it's an interesting piece on this, where it's a pretty precarious position, a caddy.
It's awful. You can be fired at any moment.
Yeah. So there's no...
Literally.
So where are the, kind of union or legal kind of issues for them, or do they just have to accept that?
It seems
I think it's just accepted,
Yeah. So, Kimmy just talked to different people. Here's a caddy who played with him 2 years ago, is what he writes. And the quote is, "It was the first time I played with Wallace. We had gone about 6 holes and I said to Dave," this is Wallace's caddy, "this guy's a bleep," but it's an area unique to the male gender. And then he talks about another caddy who remembered Wallace shouting, not for Dave's benefit, but for the benefit of the crowd, "You're the worst effing caddy out here." This is a 67-year-old man who's played with major champions, and Wallace is screaming at him, "You're the worst caddy out here." And one former player says they need to ban him for 3 months. They won't, though, because they're afraid he'll go to the US. And another caddy says, so Kimmage has gone around and talked to lots of people, which is good here.
Yeah.
Another caddy says, "No comment. I said what I had to say to Wallace 2 weeks ago." Which would have been a good conversation to hear more about.
Yeah, I mean, he does seem to be aware of it.
Yeah, that's the whole point. He's trying.
He seems to be. He's trying, and like his like it doesn't seem like he wasn't quite the chosen one of a golfer. Obviously, he went. It says here, he left school at 18, took a job in a clothing store, and accepted a golf scholarship to Jacksonville State University in Alabama. Returned home, made the England amateur team, then set his sights in the pros. He was the 1,156th ranked player in the world at the start of 2016.
Yeah.
Which middle of 2019 now, and he's won his prize money's in here somewhere. It's in the millions anyway.
Yeah.
But that he kind of hasn't had the superstar route, if you like, to get among the elite, where you might say, came up, won everything, around the amateurs, was selected hugely in sought after in the States, and all the, if you like, the etiquette that sometimes goes around that growing up and things like that. So he seems to be fairly rough around the edges with so maybe that might have something to do with it, but certainly speaking to people the way he appears to speak to the caddies, it's not on no matter what way you've been brought up. But
he says, "It's something I'm working on. I'm not proud of how I dealt with that situation." This was when he was giving McNeely a real going over after a tournament they were close to winning. "And I've definitely addressed it and moved on." And McNeely says, people forget 3 years ago he was playing on the Alps Tour. He's having to learn. I caddy to have fun, I caddy to win majors, and if we can push through this, we're going to be stronger. So Kimmage then concludes the piece by saying it's Friday, they're on the 18th with Rahm and Westhuizen. Wallace has the honour. He turns to McNeely, driver. McNeely says, "I don't mind a 3-wood, it's just a personal preference." Wallace pulls driver, rips it down the fairway, steps back and watches Rahm. A spectator's trying to take a picture with her phone. Wallace reaches for the phone, takes the picture of Rahm, throws in a selfie before handing it back. He is charm personified. He has behaved impeccably for 2 days and is playing brilliant golf. Let's hope it lasts.
Yeah.
I think one of the keys to those last two paragraphs is rips it down the fairway. Had he taken the driver out and sliced it off 4 right and has to put has to give it back to McNeely, who's knowingly looking at the 3-wood.
I didn't follow every hole, but I was very curious to follow that group, largely because Westhuizen has got one of the more beautiful swings in the world, and Rahm is Rahm. But I was very much watching the McNeely-Wallace interaction. It was no different than every player in caddy. It was absolutely fine for those few days. But when he loses his temper, he's turning to McNeely. Above that, I wasn't too familiar with Wilma Erskine. Bit of a legend, really. She's been secretary manager of Royal Portrush for 35 years. And this is James Corrigan in The Telegraph, and it's in the Sunday Independent. So she's kind of earned the nickname The Boss. Tells a great anecdote about Rory McIlroy.
Oh, yeah.
Isn't this good stuff?
Yeah.
It was a couple of years ago, my assistant kept telling me, there's this chap who keeps ringing, asking for you to fix up a tea time. Eventually he caught me when I was in the office. The voice said, "Hi Wilma, it's Rory. Is it okay if I come and play the course?" I replied, "Rory, you're an honorary member. You're a 4-time major champion. You're the course record holder. You really don't have to ask permission." Rory says, "But I remember once you told me to always be courteous when I wanted to play any course, to always ring ahead." She said, "Yes, but you were 14 at the time."
Fantastic.
It reflects very well on McIlroy, actually, I have to say.
It does, it does. And
But she's talking really, Jack, about the change at Portrush from the 1980s through to now.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, it's great for Northern Ireland that the Open is returning to Portrush since 1951 or sometime like that. I'm staying up in Belfast at the minute, you know, and they're really promoting that and the Game of Thrones. What more do you want on a weekend, you know, golf and the Game of Thrones. So it's tremendous. But she speaks about, you know, Portrush is now high up on every golfer's bucket list.
Yes.
She looked at the diary in 1985 and there was one American 3-ball who played in the whole year. We were so excited, we put a big circle around it and marked it USA.
Isn't it amazing?
And it's absolutely amazing. And now it's booked out and you have to go years and months.
She said now when they ring, they don't ask what month can they get out, it's what year, the Americans.
Yeah, and it's fantastic for Northern Ireland, it's fantastic for Portrush, and it's a fantastic golf course as well. So hopefully, you know, this Open can be, you know, promoted even more because it's a great golfing destination.
This Orange Parade nonsense on the Saturday night can go and jump as well.
Yeah.
We took about 36 grand in green fees that year in the 80s when the Americans came. Last year we took 2.2 million with a 5 million turnover. So it really is amazing. I remember even driving up there in 2012. There was like, I think it might have been like the Stephen Nolan show or something.
Yeah. Mm.
And very famously, and it's on the BBC website, in 2011, a Dutch tourist had called Portrush the Beirut of Northern Ireland because it just needed a lick of paint and needed to be brought up to speed.
Yeah.
And they've put 17 million into the town just this year for this tournament.
Yeah.
So it's thriving. It's an amazing story. And look, it doesn't happen without the peace process. That's the truth.
No, it doesn't.
No, she references that as well.
We were just hoping that the legacy of it will, you know, benefit all of the golf courses around Northern Ireland, of which there are many and many great ones. So
Port Stewart down the road is outrageous. They're all like
Royal County Down is another one.
Royal County Down. I know our racing industry is right up there, but we may be the world leaders in golf courses.
It's incredible. Like, you know,
space.
Land in any airport and drive kind of 40 or 50 miles in any direction, you're going to find some astonishing golf courses.
Yeah. The Pete Cowen interview, Clock's Getting Against Us, is well worth the read with Dermot Gilleese. He's kind of the best coach in the world now. Basically, he's had 10 major winners in the last 9 years. Like, Pete Cowen was watching the US Open with Gary Woodland beating Brooks Koepka, and he coaches both of them. You know, this guy is just the business. I love Irish players, he says to Dermot Gilleese, because they're individuals. Everybody comes to golf having learned the game in a different way in Ireland. Perhaps by observation or another sport, they pick up what they like and they make it work. Talks about Clark being the most talented of the older generation.
Yeah, and a classic kind of a coach. He was a pro himself, not a great pro, but still a pro himself. And they sometimes make the best coaches because they know their own limitations and yet can pass it on to the others. So I think that's a really interesting piece.
Yeah, he talks about learning as well. The price that he paid. I think it's in the pull quote there that the amount of money he paid. You know, $200 for 10 lessons. You know, in the space of a few weeks, and basically, you know, you have to pay to learn. I think is the line in the piece that, you know, that amount of money and time, etc., that he's invested, and how it's paying off for him.
1978, he paid $200 an hour for lessons, $2,000 for 10 lessons over 2 weeks to learn. Yeah. The tutor was Gardner Dickinson, who was Ben Hogan's guy. Which is kind of legendary place to learn. It says, of the more mature players, so he rates Clark as probably the most naturally talented. It says of Christy O'Connor, he played with O'Connor when he was on tour. Saturday morning arrived, first tee, he was a bit rough around the edges. First drive, a drivable par 4, he topped his drive no further than the ladies' tee. Without blinking an eyelid, he simply walked forward, driver still in hand, proceeded to swish the ball off the deck onto the green. I will never forget it. Which sounds outrageous. McIlroy, the most talented hand-eye coordinated player you'll ever see, he says. Greater emphasis on technique would bring greater consistency, but he says that would take away something.
Yeah, I thought that was interesting.
Isn't it interesting? That would diminish the talent if he got too technical.
Exactly. So when he's going to win big. Because that's just the way he plays. You know. So it's it's a real coach mentality. Well, how much do you interfere with or just back off?
Yeah, it's a sign of a good coach then, like as well, that you recognise that and don't try, because you've seen golfers in particular over the years who start tweaking with things and lose what got them there in the first place.
Totally. I was listening to him being interviewed in 5 Live recently, and I think he made the point that one of the greatest pieces of coaching in golf history is Jim Furyk's dad.
Just going to say,
yeah.
Who was a golf pro himself.
And
looked at his son with this horror show of a backswing, but understood it was
just
consistently doing
just
it.
Leave it.
And when you go back, just going back to Wimbledon and Koko Gauff and all that sort of stuff, that, you know, what the next step is on the coaching process of these things, where, you know, Martina Navratilova has recognised all these different things. What does her coach, you know, what's the next step for her coach to get her to the next level, because these things all come, you know, her natural talent, the brain that she has, allied to the technical stuff, to the mentality and all that, and the challenge that you face with that.
How quickly would you say to Koko Gauff, we need to fix all of this now? Or how quickly would you say, well, I'm not going to tell her about the other stuff that's wrong with her game because I don't want to ruin her confidence. We're going to do it slowly but surely. There's such an art to it.
And you can see golfers that they overanalyze and can't get it back.
So much time to think.
So that's an important point.
As we begin to wrap up, Jack and Aidan, are there any pieces you want to just point people in the direction of that might be worth a look?
Yeah, so the Sunday Independent has a good kind of almost a section on cricket. There's a Lord's Test coming up between Ireland and England, so some fantastic pieces in that, which kind of gives a sense of where cricket is at now in Ireland, and also a great piece by Eamon Sweeney looking back on the West Indies visiting in the, I think this mid-1980s. The only other piece that I picked up was just two brief pieces in the Sunday Times. One on Mo Johnson signing for Rangers 30 years ago, the first Catholic to sign. It's by Graham Souness himself, who's manager, and he talks about Mark Walters was the first black player, Mo Johnson was the first Catholic player. He said did it for footballing reasons, and also a nice mention that Ray Houghton was, I think Ray Houghton must have been at Oxford at that stage, and instead of going to Liverpool he could have gone to Rangers, but there was a period of reflection and
he talked to some family and advisors,
friends, and that didn't happen. So that's an interesting piece. And right beside that there's a piece on referees in England and how black and ethnic minorities are not represented as referees at all. And one amazing stat for me, in the 27-year history of the Champions League, there's never been a black referee.
Is that right?
Yeah, that's one of the and I thought that was an interesting piece on that. So just
it's more than just a statistical anomaly, isn't it?
Absolutely, and so we talk a lot about coaches, you know, in England, and black and ethnic minority coaches, and how that's been impacted. But here's another area of the game that is not being looked at.
You wanted to mention the Hendersons?
Yeah, the Hendersons. There's a League of Ireland piece by David Kelly in the Sunday Indo again, that Dave and Stephen Henderson and their mother, who I think is 81, fantastic picture by Mark Condren, taken it at the house in Dublin there last week. Basically, you know, their family of, their father was a goalkeeper. They've sort of a lineage within the League of Ireland stretching back 60 or 70 years. There's three sons, I think, if I get it right, you know, off the top of my head, I think there's three sons who are goalkeepers. Another son then from there, Stephen Jr., who I think is still playing. I think he might have got a new deal with a Premier League club just recently. Wayne also, who was an Irish international, and Stephen and David, who they both have plenty to say about the state of the game, their own, you know, history and stuff like that. It's kind of a quirky piece. It's the sort of piece that you'd kind of stumble upon, and I think with the picture that's there, you might go into it. Going back to the GAA, we were saying before about the things you can put on the calendar. Michael Clifford has a column around the putting foul play in the sin bin and hurling, and then the back pass rule, that he's actually in favour of it. I know Eamon Sweeney has a piece saying he's not in favour, he thinks it's ridiculous, but the Michael Clifford's piece should be a no-brainer, that it'll reward, it'll create better spectacle. And then there's another piece of Shane McGrath there talking about the GA's half-cocked ideas simply must be resisted. So even within, you know, getting to the business end of the Super 8s and the hurling and all that in the GAA, they're still talking about ideas and rules and money and structures and, you know, tiers and all sorts of stuff like that. It's the beast of the GAA at this time of year is never. You can never get enough of it, really.
No. Gents, thanks very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Much appreciated. On the papers today, again, Jack Anderson, Professor of Sports Law at the University of Melbourne, and Aidan O'Hara, Deputy Group Head of Sport with the Independent. We'll take a short break, and then we're back with the latest at Lahinch, and we'll go over to Anthony Moyles as well.